A good horror story always gets under your skin, but each horror story is unique in its internal machinations, the way it triggers specific fears and plays around with different concepts. Horror stories, and more specifically horror games, are the closest thing we have to a controlled nightmare, and good horror fiction always stays with you. Weeks, months, years may pass since you saw the credits or closed the book, and then one day something reminds you of it and transports you back into this nightmare. I played Frictional Games' masterpiece SOMA almost 8 years ago, and I haven't brought myself to re-experience it since. But there are times when I see a video discussing it in my YouTube recommendations, hear a snippet of its impeccable soundtrack, or a memory of the game flashes in my mind's eye, and my heart sinks. I feel like... All good horror stories have their own unique vibes, constructed from an intricate web of visual imagery, sound design, and themes. Sometimes it can manifest in the smallest things, like how you can hear the game's title and instantly know how it sounds. Silent Hill, for example, to me sounds like... There is this other game, well, a collection of games called Unsorted Horror, made by game designer Mike Klubnika, who had a little breakthrough recently with another title, Buckshot Roulette. While some authors, like for example Kitty Horror Show, may explore horror that is disturbing and raw, but undeniably organic, the worlds of Mike Klubnika fight any semblance of organic life. There are monsters in some of the games, yes, but even they are overshadowed by the indifferent cold metal and concrete. These are the worlds that have very little place for humanity. They sound like... and... Unsorted Horror is 5 small games designed to be played in one session, but don't let the short runtime fool you. These games latch onto you, bury themselves deep into your mind. There is a lot to think about. The other side doesn't seem to be so horror-y at first. Outside of a short snippet of exposition that tells the story of a walled-off city where people are not allowed to go outside, and claustrophobic dimly lit environment reminiscent of another great indie horror, Iron Lung, the game is almost relaxing. Your character saw a glimpse of the outside world and decided to break free by drilling a hole in the wall, so better get to it. The game doesn't explain much outside of the most basic mechanics. You are dropped into a small space with a drill, a computer, and an arrangement of various tools. What are they for? How to use them? That's for you to figure out. You put the drill in the casing, press the button on the computer, diagnostics say everything's fine. You press the button again, and the drill slowly carves your path towards freedom. Then it suddenly stops. The computer says that the drill pin is broken. Okay, there are the pins, these are screwdrivers. Wait, what's this for? The little key, or whatever it is, slides into the hole, allowing you to place a fresh pin and continue onwards. Very quickly, despite the tense atmosphere, you settle into a very comfortable, almost cozy routine, reminiscent of titles that the game critic Yadi Croshaw called post-dead games, like Viscera Cleanup Detail or Hardspace Shipbreaker. Run the diagnostics, start drilling, charge the battery, change the coolant and oil, replace broken pins, rinse and repeat. But once the drill completes its first circle, the mood drastically changes. The computer informs you that starting the second stage will alert the guards. By that time you've already gotten comfortable with the drill, and it's not like you can just pack it up and go back. We're here to break free. So you press the button, the light changes, and you start. Security arrives in 5 minutes. If the first act of The Other Side is surprisingly relaxing, Act 2 I can only describe as an anxiety simulator. Your character moves very slowly, but you didn't pay much attention to it before, but now I mean, Jesus Christ, do you want to get out of here? A lot of things start to break at once as you frantically run around the room. Security arrives in 4 minutes. As the tension rises, you start getting sloppy, forgetting to close all the lids, missing the buttons, cursing out loud all the way through. Security arrives in 1 minute. As the clock counts down to 0, you start anxiously looking into the door frame, waiting for guards or some horribly deformed monster. I mean, no one said that they would be humans, but you are almost there. Just a little push, a couple of inches of steel, and then the screen cuts to black. You see the lush green grass of the outside world, bathed in natural sunlight. You take a step outside, breathing in the fresh air that wasn't sent through the ventilation systems. You cough slightly. The air is much crisper here than the one you breathed for your entire life. You leave the giant metal monstrosity behind. You've won. The tension pulled by the second act was so strong that I continued to look over my shoulder, waiting for the guards to run after me. Someone just putting a bullet in my head. But I won't have it so easy. The subversion of The Other Side is much more cruel. You walk past the tree towards the hills until suddenly you are met with an invisible wall. In any other game I would probably see this as a technical limitation or a glitch, something immersion breaking. But in this case it felt authentic. Like I wasn't denied the path further by the game's engine. Rather, something inside of me told me to turn around. And as I did so, I saw a small note put on the other side of the tree. It says, "This place isn't what the rest is indistinguishable." I look back to the horizon once again, and I see it. The horrible giant creature with many legs rushing towards me. I start running back to the rusted metal prison I triumphantly broke out of just moments ago. I would never make it in time. This is how the game ends. Out of all the games in the collection, Control Room Alpha is the one that deserves a separate content warning before we proceed. So, if you have arachnophobia, you may suspect you have arachnophobia, or you just don't want to brighten your day with these 8-legged critters, skip to this timecode or use chapters in the description. Deal? Okay, if you're still here, you've been warned. Control Room Alpha really stands out from the whole collection as an undeniably horror comedy game. From the fully voiced supervisor with a thick Russian accent who calls you comrade.
Congratulations on your new position in the EKRE Foundation.
And warns you to be careful with the equipment because it costs a whopping 1 million Vietnamese dong, which is like 40 bucks at the time of recording, to the sign that reads, "Caution, big ass spiders. Exit at your own risk." All of this would have been so funny if not for the fact that you have to work in the same room as them. But hey, it's not like you need to go in there. Yeah, the spiders might be creepy, but your job is to just push some buttons. Plus, your little control room is protected with a good piece of strong glass, right? So, better get to work, eh? The supervisor instructs you to open the lid, so you push the big red button on the control panel, and hell no, nah, I'm out of here. Of course, there is no way out for you. Somebody has to do the job. Your front glass gets damaged a bit, which is concerning, but the more concerning thing is that while extracting the samples, or whatever these things are, the manipulator malfunctions and drops one of them on the ground. The supervisor, with his regularly cheerful tone, asks you to go outside and pick it up, adding that most of the creatures that came out are harmless, which is a peculiar choice of words. This section is predictably unnerving. The game did a great job at laying down the foundation for it, and it has a jump scare that, not gonna lie, totally got me. But hey, you're back, you're safe, you finished the job. The relief, however, is cut short. A strange sphere floats out of the spider hole and... Carbon Steel is a game about forbidden science. The story description on itch.io reads, looking to earn some quick cash, you sign up to work for a private research organization. 3 days of work for a year's worth of money. There is a reason this laboratory was only used once. Its reopening would go against all moral principles. You don't know exactly what kind of research is being done here or how it will be used. These things are not for you to know. Your job is simple. Bring up creatures from extreme depths of the earth, cross-reference its type and weight with the handy tables provided for you, mix the ingredients in the right proportions, extract the sample, give it to the scientists, and rest in this totally normal and absolutely comfortable room. The first day was rather uneventful, outside of one nightly guest we will talk about later. I was more concerned about learning what goes where and how to operate all the right levers. The only disturbing thing was the amount of rust on every surface, like the whole world is slowly corroding into non-existence, which is on par with the rest of the collection. On day 2 you have some more steps added to your list. Now you have to determine the type of creature yourself, using this handy scanner, but something's not working. You take out the scanner and find this. Another floppy drive. You insert it into the computer to see the message from one of the engineers. They warn you that you are in trouble. The researchers have certain plans for you. This isn't hard to believe. The emails that you get each day praise your work and say that you have a big future if the quality of your work continues. Well, before you may have interpreted this big future as some kind of promotion or just a hefty bonus at the end of your contract. Now the feeling that you may not like what the researchers have in store for you settles down. The engineer says that to get out, tomorrow you'll need to use a canister marked with an X. The rest of the day is rather normal. Over the course of 2 days, from bits and pieces of information, you get the sense that the creatures you take samples from are dangerous, but the danger and the sheer cosmic horror of it is abstracted through the science lingo and data points. You aren't dealing with some kind of monster with dozens of eyes and limbs. You are dealing with an alpha-class sample that weighs 148 pounds. Well, maybe it's for the best. Maybe you don't really want to see what lies deep down. But you do see it. After day 1, you wake up in the middle of the night, the door is open, you walk out of your cell, let's not pretend it's more than that, and you see this deformed meat thing. Its multiple eyes all looking at you. Before you can do anything or even comprehend what stands before you. Did you actually see that? Or was it some kind of hallucinatory nightmare? Best not to dwell on it too long, still got a job to do. Day 3 follows the same mechanical progression as the other side. Now the creature is aggressive and is actively damaging the vessel it is contained within. So you have to fix it from time to time. Just another thing to look out for, but it gives the game a nice sense of tension and challenge. Now there is no time to waste. I did what the engineer instructed me to do. I used the marked canister. As soon as I did that, I get on a tram and leave. No parting words or congratulations on the job well done. I hope at least they'll pay me what I'm owed. You get the congratulations, however, if you ignore the warning from the engineer. The door out remains locked, you go to bed. Next morning you receive an email titled "Goodbye." It reads, "We just finished reviewing the final data pool. Indeed, your work has proven to us that the risk is justified by the benefits. Excellent work. However, compared to ourselves, the life forms we have previously studied are significantly less advanced. We believe that a human body would yield far more interesting results. You will have the honor of being the first pressure-treated human. Please remain seated." Wait, no, that can't be right. You already know what is going to happen. I'm just gonna let it play out. There are no jump scares or spiders in Concrete Tremor, but it's the only game from the collection that actually made me sick. The game takes you by the throat with its jagged atmosphere from the word go, when your character says,
"I am starving,"
in a synthesized voice that will be familiar to any fan of another indie horror, Faith. I think anyone who played it can't read the word without this voice created by an old 1980s computer program popping up in their head. And it's not just the sound, even the choice of words communicates this cruelty and hopelessness. Your character isn't hungry or wouldn't mind taking a bite. They are starving. In the cafeteria, you overhear the conversation between the two other tenants. They discuss that the only thing they can see from the window is a wall, and they have no idea where they are, but also someone apparently opened the door to the roof, worth checking out. The view from the roof brings more questions than answers, however. Then the game cuts to the scene in the helicopter. The people there request permission to open fire, presumably at you, and say that it would be unfair if they jump ship. We cut to another scene, and here the purpose of the whole thing is revealed. This is some kind of twisted game of battleships, only instead of ships you play with buildings. The ominous voice on the other side explains the rules and adds that 5 consecutive misses earn an opponent a phone call. The twisted cruelty of that particular rule will be revealed a bit later. If you are in any way tuned into what's going on and view it as not just some silly little game, it's really difficult to do what the game asks you to do. You know that there are people in these buildings, people that have no idea what is happening around them. Sure enough, you quickly find out just how little they know about what awaits them. My character says that there has been a mistake and this person will be evacuated. They just need to tell what building they're in.
Oh my god! Yes.
Even through the distorted voice synthesizing technology, you can hear panic and desperation in their voice. And then it hit me. The person on the other side tried to express their gratitude, but who cares? We got what we needed. As soon as the realization seeped in, I said out loud, "No way." In my recording of the game, there are like 2 whole minutes of me sitting motionless because I just could not bring myself to do what the game wanted. It was such a powerful moment of subversion, by far the strongest in the whole collection. But then I gave in. There was no other way to finish the game, so I, slowly at first, delaying the moment when I fully commit to this cruel game, entered the number on the keypad, C9. Then C8, C7. Entering the following numbers was much easier. There was no use of pretending anymore. Predictably, I hit the target. The building on the other side collapsed, forever burying the caller from C9, crushing them and all the other unfortunate tenants under the weight of concrete, steel, and indifference. For what it's worth, the unwilling sacrifice of the C9 tenant was pointless. My opponent managed to beat me first, although I'm sure the victory for them wasn't as sweet as they might have hoped. It does not matter if you've lost or won, it all ends the same way. Your character takes out the revolver, and there is no winner in this game, only cruelty and violence. Tartarus Engine is the final game in the collection, and out of all of them is the game with the biggest amount of narrative and lore behind it. It is also kind of a heist game. As the opening slide tells us, 2009 was the year when the Tartarus Engine was created, an immensely powerful computer that can simulate realities of eternal torment. A machine able to create lifelike simulations is definitely an enticing thing, and so our protagonists, 4 technicians, create a plan to use the system for their own gains, presumably to create their own virtual paradises. There is no such thing as absolute security. The final line of the introduction tells us this might become important later. Out of all the games in the collection, Tartarus Engine the most has the vibe of an interactive short story, not in the sense that it is a text-based choose-your-own-adventure game, but in the sense that any gameplay mechanics are secondary to the story being told. There is no real gameplay loop to speak of, unlike in The Other Side or Carbon Steel. You are here to do one specific heist, not a series of heists that get progressively more complicated. And the extremely short time limit ramps up the tension quite nicely. Tartarus Engine is also rather funny, but unlike Control Room Alpha, the jokes come not from the setup of the game, but from the characters, who really feel like they bit more than they could chew. Although, on a mission like this, you really would have felt more comfortable with people who knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, come on guys, we're on a little time crunch here. But that's all good. You managed to sneak in and you have some time before midnight to do all you need to do. You get into the metallic bowels of the Tartarus Engine and it's just gargantuan. This section brought back memories of exploring the Citadel in Half-Life 2 or the megastructure of Naissance. This thing can be the size of the whole city for all I know, but no time to look around. After the other games in the collection, the mechanical puzzle and the time limit were less anxiety-inducing and made me feel almost powerful. Like a cool thief who steals their target and disappears right before they might get caught. Which is exactly what happened in my playthrough. I put this, I don't know, some sort of server rack, and when the clock struck midnight, I was already on my way back. Time to get to work and build our own virtual paradises. You catch up with your co-conspirators, and you get a little taste of what life is like for those trapped in the Tartarus Engine. What does the eternal simulated torture look like? Well, what you see isn't particularly gruesome or shocking. It's potatoes. Peeling potatoes. Forever and ever until the end of times. Luckily this was just for calibration and your friend gets you out soon enough. Now it's time to be the demiurge of your personal heaven. And the time for the game's twist, which I must say is incredibly well timed.
How long did it take you to write the code? I did not write it, I found it.
There may be no such thing as absolute security, but recklessness is definitely a strong one. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to ruminate on that thought as the Tartarus Engine ping-pongs your consciousness from one layer of simulation to another. For how long? Well, let's just say you have no other place to be. Okay, that was intense and definitely captivating. So, how's everyone doing? Good? Let's take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Now, here's the question. What does it all mean? It's easy to brush off Unsorted Horror as just a silly collection of little experiments, quick horror subversions that only meant to say, "Gotcha, you sure did not expect that to happen, huh?" But we're not taking the easy route. Each game in the collection is short, yes, usually no longer than 15 minutes, but exploration of serious themes is not an exclusive domain of books that can deal plus 10% blunt force damage if accidentally dropped on an unfortunate passerby. Sometimes you can find a lot in small things. Sometimes you wish you really didn't. Because to me, Unsorted Horror is definitely saying something. Through its visual design, the choice of settings and mechanical limitations, it says... Tetsuo the Iron Man is a 1989 science fiction body horror film written and directed by Shinya Tsukamoto. It is not a comfortable watch. There is only a handful of spoken lines of dialogue. The film loves to jump between tense, drawn-out scenes and rapid violent montages and doesn't shy away from depicting violence of any kind. from gross and painful body horror to sexual violence. Most of the scenes from the film won't look out of place in a 90s Nine Inch Nails music video, the observation which is supported by the fact that Tsukamoto was actually supposed to direct for Nine Inch Nails. The job fell through, however. Tsukamoto and Reznor managed to collaborate on an MTV Japan commercial and a soundtrack for Tetsuo the Bullet Man. Both are, expectedly, as industrial as you can possibly get. With the relatively short runtime of 67 minutes, there is a meager amount of footage I can actually use, without YouTube police breaking down my door and sentencing me to 5 years of making MrBeast reaction videos, so we have to do with some static shots from time to time. While it may be tempting to write Tetsuo off as just some kind of grindhouse exploitation flick that's all shock and no substance, I feel like it would be wrong. The film has a story and a message, however, Tetsuo is absolutely indifferent to any semblance of cohesion or story structure. The scenes of the past, the present, and even shots from Tsukamoto's previous work, The Adventure of Dencho Kozo, are all mashed together at a breakneck pace, complemented with a heavy use of hyperlapses that give the whole rhythm an extremely jagged feeling. In the retrospective written for Unwinnable, Orion Gray described the film as all technology is grotesquely organic, everything organic is distressingly prone to decomposition, and it's all happening at 10,000 miles per hour. Through its combination of rhythm, visuals, and industrial soundscapes, interspersed with some incredibly cheesy smooth jazz, Tetsuo feels like an intense fever nightmare, or if you want to be more charitable, you can call it a tonal piece. Less narrative, more vibes. Tetsuo tells the story of an unnamed Japanese salaryman and another character played by Tsukamoto himself, who's usually referred to as a metal fetishist. Following a violent encounter with a strange woman with a metal arm, the salaryman slowly starts turning into a human-metal hybrid. These transformations are always violent and excruciatingly painful. Throughout the whole film, we see glimpses of what later revealed to be flashbacks of a hit-and-run accident that connects the three main characters: the salaryman and his girlfriend, and the fetishist, who was the victim of said accident. During one of the interludes shown from his perspective, we see the doctor, who explains that a piece of metal somehow got stuck in his brain, potentially the source of these violent transformations. Eventually, the metal fetishist finds the salaryman and attempts to assimilate him to create an entirely new form of life. "Don't you understand?" he says during their final confrontation. "Your future is metal." The film ends with two characters remade in a giant metal creature, as the camera shows the words "New World" written on the grid fans. As the creature that looks like a bizarre hybrid of a tank and a statue takes to the streets, the fetishist says, "We can mutate the whole world into metal, we can rust the world into the dust of the universe. Our love can destroy this whole fucking world." Okay, so what does this have to do with Unsorted Horror? I think a whole lot. Tetsuo the Iron Man behind the gore and body horror is, at least in my opinion, an exploration of anxieties of the age when the line between the man and the machine becomes increasingly blurred to the point of non-existence. A topic that weirdly connects it to another Japanese classic that came out 8 years later, Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue, which substitutes the world of metal with the world of the early internet. A film which I can recommend with a lot more confidence. Both works were created at the cusp of the modern information age, the age we live in today, the age in which the Unsorted Horror was created, and the age which is reflected in these games. While there isn't a game in the collection in which you slowly turn into metal, in all of them characters are denied their own humanity one way or another. From tenants and the players of Concrete Tremor only existing to facilitate this sick game created for their unknown reasons, to being used as a test subject or even their consciousness broken down into code and fed into the Tartarus Engine. It is no coincidence that a lot of these games revolve around methodically operating some kind of machinery. That comfortable routine that I talked about has the other side. Pun totally intended, you are basically a part of the mechanism. But I mean, I know that I'm not a machine, I am a human being. Unlike my electric kettle, I can have thoughts and feelings, and play video games, but when looking at Unsorted Horror from this perspective, it's hard not to think about the situation many people find themselves in. From the industrial sector to Amazon warehouse employees to gig economy workers to anyone, really. The situation that Ian Danskin of Innuendo Studios poignantly described as
give your employers as good as an automaton would, or maybe don't get paid.
And goes beyond modern labor, really. Even in our downtime, with our personal interests and traits being picked apart, digested and categorized for the sake of algorithms. You are only valuable insofar as you are useful. No one needs a kettle with opinions, so go boil some water. Keep up the good work, and maybe you too will get the honor of being the first pressure-treated human. Here is a little personal story. Sometimes, usually when things aren't going too well, I find myself stuck in all too familiar loop, switching between the same apps like a little robot going in circles who got a bug in their software. And this isn't doing any good for me as a human, but for the companies that own said apps, I'm sure it benefits greatly to turn me into a little content consumption machine. And believe me, the irony of saying this in a YouTube video does not escape me. That's the paradox we will talk about in a different essay. Unsorted Horror wasn't scary for me because of monsters, or big-ass spiders, or even grey Soviet apartment buildings that I've seen more than enough in my lifetime. It was the other kind of horror, being denied my own humanity, being seen as less than, feeling like a good horror story always gets under your skin.